What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it is Thursday, which means it is time for the weekly redraft. We did 2020 2 weeks ago, 2019 last week, and today we are going to be looking at the 2018 draft. These guys are pretty established NHLers at this point, 23, 24 years old, multiple seasons under their belt. When looking at the OG top 10, it goes Dahlin, Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, Tkachuk, Hayden, Zadina, Hughes, Boquist, Kravtsov, and Bouchard. So definitely some guys that are going to stay in that top 10. Definitely some guys that kind of busted. But without further ado, let's get into the first pick. First off, at 10th overall was Evan Bouchard to the Edmonton Oilers. Evan Bouchard's obviously going to go higher in this redraft. So I have them going with Yegor Sharangovich, my favorite player in the goddamn NHL. Now, Yegor Sharangovich, he is 2 years older. He was supposed to technically get drafted in 2016. He was born in June of 1998. But when looking at Sharangovich, he has been a pretty goddamn productive NHL player. First 2 seasons with the New Jersey Devils, had 30 points in 54 games, then 46 in 76 games, playing mainly with Jack Hughes. Did have a bit of a down year last year with the Devils, only 30 points in 75 games, kind of got split away from Jack Hughes, so people thought maybe he was just a Jack Hughes merchant. Gets traded to the Calgary Flames in the Tyler Toffoli deal, and is now having a career season, 20 goals, 14 assists, 34 points in 47 games. That is on pace for 35 goals, 24 assists, 59 points. So obviously he is really broken out at the age of 25. Do I think that 35 goals is sustainable? No, but I think he can be a reliable 25 and 25 kind of guy. The underlying numbers do not suggest that he is this absolute monster. He is just shooting at a pretty high rate. So when looking at Sharangovich, I think he adds to that Edmonton Oilers forward core. There wasn't really another defenseman that really jumped off the page. Yes, the Edmonton Oilers probably did need defense at this time, but there's really no other guys that come to note that have had the impact of Yegor Sharangovich. So I do have them selecting a defenseman here at 9th overall. The Rangers ended up taking Vitaly Kravtsov. He's already playing in goddamn Russia. So I have them taking K'Andre Miller here. They're going to end up with K'Andre Miller yet again. He really broke out last year with 43 points, not having exactly the same offensive impact, only 18 points in 45 games thus far in this season. His even strength offensive numbers have really cratered this year, but he's still playing a solid around 22 minutes a night on a playoff team. I think going forward, he's going to get back to around 35, 40 points and be a very big factor in the New York Rangers top 4. He's not going to become this eventual top pair absolute stud, I don't think, but he just needs to limit some of his mistakes that he's made. He's made some really dumb decisions in terms of defending and with the puck this year. So I think that K'Andre Miller still does have a very bright future. Defensemen do tend to take longer to develop, so the fact he's already having a decent impact on such a team, when looking at K'Andre Miller, I still think that he goes pretty easily. He didn't initially go in the top 10, but I think he's still a top 10 guy, even after having a bit of a down year this season. 8th overall, Blackhawks went with Adam Boquist. I have them going with Joel Farabee. Last 2 years for Joel Farabee, he was a solid around half a point per game guy. Didn't really think much of him because the Flyers were kind of a garbage team the last 2 years. But this year he's really broken out. 17 goals, 23 assists for 40 points in 48 games. So he's on pace for like mid-60s this year. And when looking at him in terms of even strength production, he has 24th in the entire NHL in even strength points this year. Ahead of guys like Tkachuk, Matt Tkachuk, that is, not Brady Tkachuk, that I'm going to talk about later, Jason Robertson and Draisaitl, and he's 14th in the entire NHL in terms of even strength points per 60. Sorry, just fixing my hair. So when looking at it, he's shooting the puck a ton more, roughly about 2.5 shots per game. Last year, that was only 1.6. And mind you, he's playing a minute less this year for the Philadelphia Flyers because their forward core just on the whole is a lot better. Obviously got Sean Couturier back, as well as a bunch of other guys taking that next step. So he's been really efficient in his around 16 minutes a night going forward. Do I think he's going to be a consistent mid to high 60s point guy? Maybe not, but he's definitely in a very good top 6 forward, very, very good second liner, probably a first liner going forward. So I think at 8th with the Chicago Blackhawks, they were just getting out. They were just starting their rebuild, so it doesn't really matter whether they go forward or defenseman here. So I look at Joel Farabee, has developed really well. He initially went 14th overall, and now I have him going 8th to the Chicago Blackhawks. 7th overall, Vancouver Canucks obviously took Quinn Hughes. Fantastic pick. We'll talk about him later. I have them going with Sean Durzi. Like Jaeger Sharangovich, he's a year older. He was technically supposed to be drafted in 2017, but wasn't. He has, I believe, an October 1998 birthday compared to June of 1998 Sharangovich. That adds another year with that September 15th deadline. But when looking at Durzi and the Canucks, I think there is an argument that Farabee might be the better player. He has the longer NHL track record, and maybe going forward he'll be better. But when looking at the Vancouver Canucks, they don't have Quinn Hughes technically given this redraft, so they really needed that defenseman. And when it comes to Sean Durzi, last year 38 points in 72 games with the LA Kings, not playing a massive role. Obviously Drew Doughty was that number one. He was one of the best even strength and power play guys in the entire league in terms of just raw per game per 60 minutes. So when looking at Sean Durzi, he gets traded to the Arizona Coyotes, now is fully breaking out after last year being around 43, 44 point pace. He has 27 points in 40 games, which is on pace for 55 points. He's really emerged as the number one defenseman in Arizona, playing around 22-15 a night, leading the Coyotes in ice time, average ice time by like a minute and a half. He has been their number one this season. His defense has improved steadily over the last 2 years, not just a purely offense defenseman, but when looking at him analytically this year in terms of even strength offense, he ranks 16th in even strength offense by Evolving Hockey. So he has really taken that next step, and going forward should be around the 50-point guy as the Coyotes continue to improve. Do I think he'll ever be a top 25 defenseman in the NHL? No, probably not, but he's going to be a very, very good top pairing guy. So the Canucks end up getting Sean Durzi here to be their top pairing defenseman of the future, because obviously Quinn Hughes is going to go later in the redraft. At number 6, this is a tier up compared to previously. Sean Durzi into Evan Bouchard to the Red Wings instead of Philip Zadina. This is a big jump. Obviously. When you look at it, Evan Bouchard, the prior 2 seasons was a solid 40-ish point guy, but is fully broken out, has 42 points in 43 games as of right now. Him and Ekholm have formed the best pair in the entire NHL. They have like a 64% expected goals percentage. His defensive numbers have massively improved. Definitely part of that is because he's playing with Ekholm, but in his own right, his defensive game has come a long way compared to people absolutely shitting on him during his first full season in the NHL. And rightfully so, his defensive numbers weren't good, but I feel like that stigma around him has kind of carried. He has improved his defensive game a ton, and going forward, he should be a consistent 70 to 80 point defenseman. Yes, does he get some of those points, at least half of those points on the power play? Yes, but he still is 11th in the NHL in terms of defenseman even strength points. So in looking at it, I think he has the makings of a number one, considering what he's doing right now. No other Edmonton Oilers defenseman had done this before. Tyson Barrie was horrible defensively and didn't even put up these offensive totals. He peaked at around like 60 to 65 points. So Evan Bouchard is showing that he is a top 10 defenseman this season, in my opinion, and going forward can be a consistent top 20 guy in the entire NHL. But at number 5, the Coyotes first off took Barrett Hayton. I do not have them taking Barrett Hayton. I have them taking Noah Dobson. His first 2 years in the NHL, Islanders kind of eased him into it. He was only playing around 15 minutes a night. Then the past 2 years has been around a solid 50-point defenseman, playing around 21 minutes a night. This year, fully broken out, 48 points in 47 games, playing 25-51 a night, which is second most in the entire NHL, only behind Drew Doughty. He has really had to carry this pretty hobbled defense core of the New York Islanders. We've had to sign Robert Bertuzzo, get Mike Riley off waivers. This defense core has been brutal this year in terms of injuries, but he has risen to the occasion. He is playing with far more confidence and just making far more plays at the blue line compared to previous Islanders iterations and defensemen I have not seen made on this team. The creativity that he has shown this year and ability to get up on the rush has really impressed me. He's solidifying himself as a top 10 defenseman in the NHL, and right now for me, probably the third best defenseman in the NHL. You look at his even strength production. Yes, he's third in the entire NHL overall in points, but he actually has more even strength points than Cale Makar, which is pretty crazy to say. So Noah Dobson has fully emerged as an absolute stud. 4th overall was Brady Tkachuk. I still have Brady Tkachuk going 4th overall. You can definitely say Bouchard and Dobson have maybe been better this year, but when you look at Brady Tkachuk, he walked into the NHL and was a good top 6 forward for 3 years, while Dobson and Bouchard weren't even in the goddamn NHL or barely playing at all. So I think that does matter when you look at the overall track record, what they bring to the team. And I think going forward, Brady Tkachuk is going to be about on their level. This year, he's technically having a down year. He has 19 goals, 18 assists in like 43 games, but that is still on pace for 36 goals, 34 assists for 70 points. So that's like his down year compared to last year when he was above point per game at 83 points in 82 games. So when looking at Brady Tkachuk, I still think that he's that ideal, skilled power forward that every team dreams of when they get to the playoffs. The only problem is the Senators haven't been to the playoffs with him. I still really like Brady Tkachuk, and I think at 4th overall, he still slots in pretty nicely at that spot. 3rd overall, Jesperi Kotkaniemi shocked the world when he went here to the Montreal Canadiens. I have them correctly taking Andrei Svechnikov here, a forward that has actually panned out properly. Svechnikov was even better than Brady Tkachuk right out of the gate. In his second year, he had 61 points in 68 games, was that player basically for the following 3 or 4 seasons. And now this season, he is on pace for a career-high points per game. He has 30 points in 29 games. He didn't turn into the franchise #1 guy that we thought when the Hurricanes took him 2nd overall, but he has definitely proven to be a guy that can be the 2nd best forward on a high-level contender. He's definitely not the #1 guy on Carolina. That's clearly Sebastian Aho, but he is very good in his own right, a fantastic skater, not afraid to throw the body, just the ideal player, the ideal winger that you want on your team to pair with an elite playmaking center. He is still fantastic in his own right, even though he drops 1 spot in this redraft, but that is because at 2nd overall, obviously Svechnikov went there, but I have them now taking Rasmus Dahlin. They get their franchise center in 2015 with Sebastian Aho, and then in 2018, they get their franchise defenseman. I think Dahlin would play pretty well in a Rod Brind'Amour system, and he would bring out the talent that they have kind of lacked since Dougie Hamilton got there in terms of a legit #1 playmaking, puck-moving defenseman. I think Rasmus Dahlin would be a really good fit, and you look at him and Jacob Slavin on your left side for the next decade after he got drafted. That would be absolutely fantastic. Now, Dahlin obviously broke out last year, 73 points in like 78 games. Hasn't been exactly the same in terms of production this year, in part because the Buffalo Sabres haven't been that good, but he still has 38 points in 47 games this year, has fully solidified himself as a top 10 defenseman, in my opinion. He was a little bit inconsistent in the prior years, but after back-to-back above probably 65-point seasons for him at this point, he's a top 10 guy. He's a stud. Carolina Hurricanes would be a lot better. Not be a lot better with him over Svechnikov, but I think him over Svechnikov would be the right call in this redraft. And at #1, it's pretty obvious at this point, Quinn Hughes to the Buffalo Sabres instead of Rasmus Dahlin. Rasmus Dahlin was better last year than Quinn Hughes, but basically every season that they've been in the NHL together, Quinn Hughes, besides last year, has been the better player, clearly has taken that next step to top 3 defensemen in the entire NHL, while Rasmus Dahlin's still somewhere in that like 6 to 9 range, in my opinion. When looking at Quinn Hughes, obviously probably the best puck-moving defenseman in the entire NHL. He just does everything at a very high level. And yes, he was maybe a defensive liability early on in his career, but he has really overcame those struggles early on, and rightfully so. I mean, he was a 5'10 defenseman that was known for his offense. He wasn't going to walk into the NHL and be an absolute lockdown guy defensively. It took time, but clearly he is leading the Canucks to a playoff spot right now. And if the Buffalo Sabres had a guy like Quinn Hughes, they probably still stink this year, but I think long term he is going to continue to be better than Rasmus Dahlin. Although again, at 1st and 2nd overall in this draft, these teams didn't mess up, although I think there was better options on the board. They got the next guy after that. So when looking at it overall, here's the final. Quinn Hughes, Rasmus Dahlin, Andrei Svechnikov, Brady Tkachuk, Noah Dobson, Evan Bouchard, Sean Durzi, Joel Farabee, Keandre Miller, and Yegor Sharangovich. But let me know in the comments, who am I forgetting in this redraft? I don't really think there's any massive snubs. I'll throw up some of the other leading scorers of this draft as of right now, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.